Hello, creatives. I hope you're doing well and ready to start the new year. And I know that this is the end of January and actually we're going into February. So the idea is, and I've talked to a few people and actually heard a few people say, actually the new year starts in February, which is kind of interesting because I started thinking, I kind of like that idea because thinking about taking the whole month of January to sort of ease into the new year versus pressing on the gas as soon as the first comes around. I kind of like that idea. And also, I think that I am going to make that a ritual that actually take the whole month to ease into a new year. And also, it's been a challenging month here in Southern California, so I kind of like the idea of starting the new year in February. So happy New Year. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're safe and ready to even rethink about how do you want your or this year to be creative and why creativity is important to integrate into your life this year. So in this episode, I'm actually going to have you listen to my last session, which I did last month in December. I did a session with my Creative Spirit Connection group, and it's on the topic of how creativity integrates us back to wholeness. And I thought it was really great, and I wanted to share that on my podcast so that you, the listeners, would always also be able to enjoy some of the things that I shared in that presentation. So, just to give you a brief overview of what I talked about, it really is about thinking about how creativity in your life, whatever that creative activity is, whether it's painting, drawing, doing crafts, doing mixed media, writing poetry, singing, playing music, whatever that creativity is for you, how that can be an art practice to help integrate you back to wholeness. And what I mean is that our day-to-day lives are filled with distractions and we're pulled in so many different directions. And sometimes it pulls our emotions and our energy in different directions. So that can leave us feeling fragmented and not ourself. Sometimes that can make us feel, like we're not centered, we're not grounded, we're not ourself. And what I love about this presentation is I talk about how creativity is a process in which not only to get us back to a place of calm, get our nervous system calmed down, especially when we're distracted and we're feeling anxious and worried and hurrying along to try to get stuff done. Creativity gives us a moment to just be mindful, to calm us down, to bring us to the present moment. And I know for me, the creative process, when I'm immersed in it, I can come out of an art making session or a period of creating. I can come out of that feeling more centered, more grounded, more myself. So I come up with this, I came up with this idea that, wow, creativity, the creative process is actually putting all those pieces back together. So if we're feeling fragmented, pulled in different directions, this is a really good way to pull us back together. It's like needing that time to just chill out. And I also think that creativity reconnects us back to the thing that is important to us and meaningful to us. It connects us back to our true essence. And that's why we can come out of creating feeling a little better, right? We're feeling, especially if we're feeling scattered, we should go to that art practice and find our way back to our groundedness and our center. Anyway, I'm not going to give it all away. I do walk through a little bit of an exercise in this session, in this recorded session. So I do hope you enjoy listening to it, and let's dive in. Okay. So I wanted to make this lesson a little extra special. So, throughout this class series, there's been a constant theme of trying to find ways and practices to get back to that place where you feel more centered, connected to your true and whole self, and how creativity can be an effective tool for this. So, why is this important? When we repeatedly return back to our true and whole self, we are more able to operate and navigate our life, relationships, and the world proactively. And we operate from that grounded place, especially from your healed self, your highest self, and your best self. This is not something we do once, twice, or a few times and then we're good, right? This is something that requires us to practice over and over again, and probably for the rest of our lives. Because life always provides its share of events, things trigger us, experiences, and challenges that are sometimes out of our control and unexpected. So when this happens, it's normal to get derailed. And what also happens is we can often find ourselves feeling disconnected, fragmented from our true or whole self, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what can cause us to feel disconnected and fragmented? Well, number one, world events, negative news coming from different directions, whether it's the media, conversations with others. Sometimes documentaries can leave us feeling this sort of doom and gloom. And we have to be aware that we digest and absorb this content and can also leave our nervous systems kind of overwhelmed. Sometimes too much is going on, right? We overcommitted. We have the layers of the holidays. We have responsibilities, obligations, pulling us at different directions. And then sometimes major life events happen that are out of our control, unexpected. Loss of a loved one, an illness that requires extra time and energy to focus on recovering and getting healthier. Sometimes we have to move to a new home, a new studio, a new state. And then this can leave us feeling not ourself, feeling fragmented. Sometimes we can succumb to the pressures of society or even our friends and family. We have to look a certain way, act a certain way, these expectations, right? That can actually pull us in different directions also. And for a lot of creatives, I know for me, we've spent much of our life trying to fit in and discovering our true self. And then there's the fragmenting and disconnecting ourself. So instead of doing the thing that we know will be practicing self-care, will help us reconnect, instead we go and binge watch TV, eat that extra couple of slices of pumpkin pie. That's me. Shopping. We look for those distractions because we know something is not balanced or not right inside ourselves. And then, or we're scrolling on social media. Maybe we don't reach out to that friend who can talk us down, right? And we have to be aware of that. So, what does disconnection look like? Well, you're easily irritable, extra cranky, angry or anxious, depressed or apathetic. Sometimes you can be self-righteous and defended. I've been there. Critical and judgmental. So some things trigger us, and we have this sort of overly charged reaction. And these are the warning signs. Something's off. And maybe I'm disconnected from creative spirit and I need to reconnect, right? So trust me, it's not all bad. We do what we have to do. Sometimes we have to stay informed. We do need to watch the news. We have to fulfill obligations. Those are real and valid reasons. But I believe there's a certain amount of fragmentation or disconnection that happens in order for us to define and redefine what is best for us and discover what resonates with who we truly are. Like pulling the pieces together to rebuild in order to rebuild so that we're more grounded, more centered. And then it breaks down again and we rebuild it. And this is kind of a practice that we have to do over and over. So we need an effective tool to return to this true and whole self. And that's where creativity comes in, right? Because we know when we're immersed in the creative process, we're more present, we're more mindful, we're calm. But in that moment, it allows us to check in with ourselves. It allows us that space to be curious without judgment. What's going on with me? Why did I react that way? What was my trigger? What do I most need right now? And it also gives us a chance to tap into that inner wisdom to guide us if needed. And this doesn't mean that whenever you're creating something, you get these big aha moments. It's just also a way to refuel your soul and experience a moment of stillness. So the creative process begins to help us integrate, reconnect back to those true parts, back to that sense of wholeness, our complete person, right? Reconnecting to creative spirit. And integrating isn't about cutting off those aspects of ourself that we don't feel proud about, that we're embarrassed about, or maybe those parts that we're uncomfortable with, like struggling, being frustrated, depressed. All that has to be embraced in order for us to integrate ourselves into a more whole person. So to be human is to be imperfect, but we look for the beauty in how all those parts of us come together. You no longer view yourself with the limitation of the human mind. Instead, we view ourselves with the higher self, your higher self, your whole person. To integrate yourself is to look at your beauty, your imperfections, and your gifts. It's all part of the process, but we have to slow it down enough to allow the process. So I'm going to go over the process later, but before I do that, I just want to wrap it up by saying I believe creative spirit exists in all of us and is in our life for a reason. Creative spirit has been there from the day you were born, guiding you to that first art class, guiding you to that first music class, writing class, poetry class, helping you gain a deeper and profound understanding of yourself, your experiences, the world around you. Creative spirit is there to help you evolve into that whole and creative being that you are called to be. This means navigating the world with confidence and trust in that higher power, whether it's creative spirit, creative energy, God, the universe. Creative spirit wants the best for you, and it's always finding a way to help you recognize when you need to reconnect with that source, your whole self. And our job is to recognize when we are feeling disconnected and fragmented. So, one of the things I wanted to do was break down that process for you guys so that it would make sense, because what happens is we start feeling the emotions first, or sometimes our body recognizes it. Because if we're not recognizing our emotions, our body's like exhausted, tired, maybe you have a headache, or maybe, your back is sore. Those are all signs that maybe you need a little bit of self-care and you need to reconnect, right? So if you guys go into your worksheet, we're going to walk through that process, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we start out with when we recognized we're feeling disconnected, whether that's, feeling cranky, tired. So the first one is, this is part of you really knowing you. And I'm sure you guys can recognize when you're starting to feel like, oh, I need a little bit of creative time and I need a little extra self-care. So just briefly write down in that, what are the signs for you when you feel disconnected and fragmented? Procrastination is a good one too. A good one too is lonely. I just remember sometimes when you feel extra lonely, that is also a sign. And then the second one, mindful awareness. This is so important because once we can become aware of it, right? Mindful awareness is how can you recognize it? Like, so someone says something and you feel in your body a reaction. Can you just consciously pause and say, I'm going to take a step back and kind of check in with that? You can even get off the phone and say, you know what, let me call you back in a few minutes. I need a breather. Um, Whatever that is, that's going to help give you that space to practice mindful awareness. You can take a walk. A walk is really good. Anything that is going to be mindful, meditation. There are things you can do with, you know, when you're in the company of people and nobody can tell that you're trying to center yourself. All right. Then the third one, self-inquiry with curiosity and versus judgment. So it's important to recognize when you recognize that you're feeling disconnected, you're having a reaction, being able to take the time to ask yourself, okay, what's going on here? You know, a really good example is whenever the anniversary of my dad's death comes around, I forget, but my body seems to know. And I'm like, why am I feeling off today? Why am I feeling kind of depressed? I don't know why, because I'm busy in my stuff. And then I'd have to actually look at the calendar and go, oh, okay. And it still takes me years after to recognize, you better recognize that date because you're going to start feeling it in your body. So the body remembers grief sometimes before we remember in our head. So that's something, just as an example, curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, creativity equals integration. So you can just jot some of these things down, but remember, throughout this class series, we've done a lot of creative practices that are simple to dive into. And, I hope that you are collecting these for your bag of tricks. I call them your bag of tricks for your survival kit, so that you can pull any one of those art practices that we've done throughout the year and jump right into it without over preparing without having to be something involved, and also not having to carve out 2 hours of time. You can just jump into it, right? And I'm going to encourage you guys to also take those practices and modify them. Maybe modify them so they're portable. Modify them so that you can actually take a little miniature travel kit with you to do those practices. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that recording. I hope that you got something valuable out of it. And I just want to thank you again for listening to my podcast, for watching my YouTube channel. And I hope you're doing, you're doing what you need to do to stay creative. And if you're not, that's okay. You can always start where you are by just doing the simplest creative thing for you. And remember, it's not about making something that you hang up on the wall. Creating something and allowing yourself to be creative, immersed in the creative process, is really for your own self-care, your own well-being, and it helps you become a better person. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and until next time, stay creative. Bye.